On the night of March 19, 2014, as torrential rain poured down on the quiet streets of Yangon, no one could have guessed that a terrible tragedy was unfolding inside a well-appointed house. A scream tore through the quiet air, signaling a chain of events that would haunt the neighborhood for years to come. A young girl named Theory, known for her intelligence and bright future, suddenly became the center of a dark love story with her math teacher, Yuko. They say love can overcome all obstacles, but this time it led to a dead end where emotions, anger, and despair combined into an uncontrollable storm. When Theory's parents found out about their forbidden relationship, their violent reaction created terrible pressure. The question is, what drove Yuko, a man once revered for his calm exterior, to take up arms on that fateful night? How could love turn into a rage that left 3 people dead and 1 heartbroken forever? Join us as we delve into the case that shocked Myanmar, from the heartbreaking details of the forbidden love story to the shocking trial that left the courtroom silent. Before we dive into the case, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on the latest exciting cases. Theory, the victim of this case, was a young, vibrant girl born into a wealthy and powerful merchant family in Yangon. Her parents, Mr. Mina and Mrs. Anandar, were known for their conservative and strict personalities but always loved their only daughter very much. From a young age, Theory was surrounded by a rich and complete environment, studied at the best schools, and enjoyed a life that many people dream of. Not only did Theory stand out for her beautiful appearance, with bright eyes and a radiant smile, but she was also known for her excellent academic achievements. She had a special passion for science, cherishing the dream of becoming a leading researcher to contribute to the development of the country. Teachers and friends described Theory as intelligent, eager to learn, and always enthusiastic about helping others. However, deep inside, Theory also had her own worries, often feeling pressured by the high expectations from her family and society. Theory's life began to change when she met Yuko, a middle-aged math teacher known for his seriousness and profound knowledge. Under his guidance and encouragement, Theory felt understood and found someone who would listen to her, something she rarely had from her family. Yuko was a mathematics teacher known for his calm demeanor and extensive knowledge. He had been through an unhappy marriage, which left him feeling lonely and frustrated. At the secondary school where he taught, Yuko was respected by his colleagues and students for his dedication and excellent communication skills. However, his life took a dark turn when he developed feelings for his student, Theory. The relationship between Theory and Yuko began casually and without much substance beyond the usual teacher-student interaction. Theory, with her intelligence and thirst for knowledge, would often seek out Yuko for help with difficult math problems and guidance outside of school hours. Initially, the tutoring sessions took place innocently in an empty classroom at the school, where the two shared their passion for mathematics and gossiped about life. Gradually, this closeness turned into something deeper. Yuko, whose heart had been broken by an unhappy marriage, was drawn to the innocence and empathy Theory brought. Theory, in turn, felt the support and understanding from an adult, something she had lacked in her tightly controlled home. Glimpses, meaningful words, and over-the-top attention began to become more frequent. They decided to keep their relationship a secret. They would meet secretly in places where no one would notice them, like the school library during quiet hours or small cafes where they would sit together and talk about their dreams, hopes, and worries. They knew that if the truth were revealed, the consequences would be dire, but the pull of their forbidden feelings made them unable to stop. Occasionally, Yuko would find excuses to come near Theory's house just to see her from afar or send messages through secret means. Theory also started lying to her family to have private time with her teacher. However, the needle in the bag eventually came out. When Theory's parents, Mr. Mina and Mrs. Anandar, found out about the relationship between their daughter and Yuko, their reaction was extremely fierce. As wealthy and well-known merchants in the community, they were not only concerned about the family's honor but also had high expectations for Theory's future. For them, this relationship was not only a violation of morality but also a direct threat to the perfect image they had worked so hard to build. As soon as he learned of the affair, Mina confronted Theory, anger seeping through his every word. He scolded his daughter, calling the relationship a disgrace and refusing to accept any excuses or justifications from her. Theory, accustomed to her parents' authority, tried to explain that her feelings for Yuko were genuine and that she had no intention of harming anyone. However, her every word only increased the anger in Mina's eyes and the disappointment in Anandar's gaze. Not stopping at scolding, Theory's parents made a decisive decision. Mr. Mina personally met Yuko at the school where he worked. With a determined attitude and a sharp voice, Mr. Mina spoke coldly, his sharp eyes making Yuko stunned. He asked Yukaya to leave the school and leave his daughter. Otherwise, Mr. Min would report Yukaya for inappropriate behavior with students. Yukaya felt cornered. Anger and humiliation made his blood boil, but Min's fierce gaze and the serious threat kept him silent. Knowing that the parents were not just making empty threats, Yukaya understood that his career, his honor, and even his freedom were at stake. He was forced to agree, leaving him with no choice but to distance himself from Theory to protect himself from a greater tragedy. That evening, Yukaya returned home in a heavy mood, feeling a mixture of failure and anger. Theory, meanwhile, was confined to her home by her parents, not allowed to go out and strictly monitored. She felt cut off from the world, deprived of freedom and affection. On the night of March 19, 2014, heavy rains fell, shrouding Yangon in a cold, damp darkness. Yukaya, in a state of extreme stress, decided to take a bold action that he probably did not expect. He sneaked into Theory's house through the back door, a path familiar to the servants but unfamiliar to everyone else. The lights inside the house were dim, but everything was quiet except for the sound of rain on the roof. Yukaya slipped into Theory's bedroom, where she sat quietly, unprepared for his sudden appearance. His presence created a tense atmosphere, like a thin thread that could snap at any moment. They then spent the night together, most of it in silent conversation, but those moments were filled with simmering tension. Near dawn, Yukaya suddenly made an offer that changed the situation dramatically. He wanted Theory to run away with him, leave Yangon, and start a new life away from all the pressure and prohibition. Theory shook her head, refusing without hesitation. She knew it was impossible. Leaving her family would mean losing everything she had ever had and completely breaking the sacred bond. This refusal unleashed Yukaya's pent-up emotions. His feelings of betrayal and despair made him lose control, and a heated argument ensued. Yukaya's voice grew louder, his words sharp and indignant, while Theory tried to calm the situation, but to no avail. As the argument grew louder and more heated, Min and Yender, awakened by the noise, rushed out of their bedroom and ran to Theory's room. They opened the door to find a chaotic scene, Yukaya standing there, his eyes strained and his smile twisted in a struggle. The sudden presence of Theory's parents caused things to escalate rapidly. Angry words and shouting rang out from Min as he demanded that Yukaya leave the house immediately. In a fit of rage and pent-up despair, Yukaya suddenly pulled out a kitchen knife that he had hidden in his shirt. The presence of this weapon made the room stiflingly intense. Unable to react, Mr. Min received the first blow. Yender screamed in despair as she rushed to save her husband, but she was also mercilessly attacked by Yukaya. Theory, witnessing the horrific scene, rushed in to intervene in her desperate attempt to stop Yukaya, but she was also seriously injured. The room quickly turned into a bloody mess, with 3 people lying on the floor in a chaotic scene. Screams and the sound of broken furniture attracted the attention of neighbors, who immediately called the police. Yuki, realizing the terrible consequences of his actions, briefly came to his senses, but it was too late. In fear and panic, he fled the scene, leaving behind a scene of mourning and a deathly silence, broken only by the sound of falling rain. When the police received an emergency call from neighbors, they rushed to the crime scene in the pouring rain. The police lights and sirens blared, disturbing the quiet neighborhood. The police force quickly approached the house, flashlights illuminating every dark corner, looking for signs of life. Entering the bedroom, the police were immediately overwhelmed by a horrifying scene. Mr. Mina and Mrs. Eander lay motionless on the floor, mortally wounded and bleeding profusely. On the bed, Theory was still breathing, but her breathing was weak, and her body was covered in severe injuries. An officer quickly bent down to check her pulse and determined that she was still alive, albeit in critical condition. Paramedics, who were dispatched to the scene shortly after the police received the call, rushed Theory onto a stretcher and into an ambulance. The ambulance siren blared as it left the scene, racing towards the hospital in a desperate attempt to save the young girl's fragile life. Meanwhile, police continued to comb the crime scene for any clues about the perpetrator. Bloodstains and signs of disarray throughout the room attested to the violent attack. Both Mina and Anandar were pronounced dead at the scene, their injuries indicating a brutal and merciless attack. The air in the house was filled with the smell of blood and an eerie silence. Despite being rushed to the emergency room, Theory succumbed to her injuries. News of her death was confirmed at the hospital, sending shockwaves of grief through the community. The home, once a happy place for a successful family, had become a tragic crime scene of unimaginable loss. The initial police investigation was launched shortly after the scene was cordoned off and recorded. Forensic officers moved in and began collecting evidence from the bloody scene. Among the key pieces of evidence, the blood-stained kitchen knife found near the bodies of Mina and Anandar became the focus of the investigation. The knife handle, which still bore clear fingerprints, was immediately sent to the forensic laboratory for analysis. Shortly after, laboratory tests revealed that the fingerprints on the knife matched those of Yukui. This was irrefutable evidence that he was the perpetrator of the brutal murder. This information was quickly made public internally, and a nationwide manhunt was launched for Yukui, with investigative teams and police mobilizing to search for him in and around Yangon. The search lasted for 2 months, with the police facing many difficulties because Yukui could move through many provinces, taking advantage of his network of acquaintances and complex terrain to evade pursuit. The police received many clues from people but had to carefully verify each piece of information to avoid losing track of him. Finally, after much effort, in May 2014, police received a credible tip that Yukui had turned up at a boarding house in Mandalay, a city more than 600 kilometers from Yangon. Police immediately launched a pre-dawn raid on the location, arresting Yukui without significant resistance. He was handcuffed and led away, looking exhausted and distraught, his vacant eyes clearly reflecting his awareness of his actions. The arrest of Yukui not only brought an end to a grueling manhunt but also opened the door to a more detailed investigation into the motives and complex psychological developments that drove him to commit this heinous act. At the police station, Yukui recounted the whole story in a tired tone, his eyes filled with regret and despair. He described his relationship with Theory, from initial understanding and sympathy to secret and forbidden feelings, which left both of them trapped in pressure and anxiety. Yukui explained that his love for Theory was not just a temporary infatuation but something that helped him regain a sense of life after a failed marriage and years of loneliness. When Theory's parents found out about the relationship and reacted violently, the pressure and threats pushed Yukui into a state of extreme stress. He said that on that fateful night, he only intended to see Theory one last time, taking her away from Yangon to escape the oppression. Yukui also emphasized that he wanted to face Theory's parents to explain his true feelings in the hope that they would understand and at least partially accept him. However, things spiraled out of control when the confrontation with Mr. Mina and Mrs. Eander turned heated. Yukui describes the moment when anger, frustration, and a sense of being cornered took over his rational thinking. He confessed that as the argument reached its climax, anger overcame all rational thinking, leading to a violent act that he knew he could never go back to correct. Regarding Theory, Yukui maintained that he had no intention of hurting her. Her injuries were the result of a chaotic and desperate struggle in the final moments when she tried to stop him. He said that the sight of Theory falling before his eyes was the moment that woke him up, but it was too late to change his fate. Yuki's remorse was evident in his account as he said that it was anger and despair that had turned him into a person he no longer recognized. Yuki's trial, which took place in Yangon in February 2015, became an event that attracted the attention of the whole country.